Good afternoon. Welcome to this CEEMAN IQA webinar, Relevance, Excellence and on the Move. We are very happy to welcome many people from all over the world. I've seen people who are already IQA accredited, people who are not yet accredited. I see member schools, I've seen non-member schools. I see peer reviewers, really a nice group of people where we have time today to share about our new developments about the IQA accreditation. I will share later more. And where we have also, of course, time for answering your questions, etc. But before I will explain the program of this afternoon, I would like to invite the president of CEEMAN, Professor Danica Purk, for opening words. Danica, please, welcome.
Thank you very much, Ivo. Ivo is our IQA accreditation director, and so he introduced me, I'm introducing him. I'm very, very happy to greet you all and to welcome you to our great meeting and to talk about, to share the experience from IQA that we have in the last period. So, you know, now is the time really that we are thinking about reinvention of management education. We have some time now, and we have the need to really bring up different kind of leaders, and you can do that with a good management education. And what is good management education? You will hear more from Professor Derek Abel, who was creating a great piece of art, the book, the booklet on manifesto, you know, not on manifesto, but called manifesto. And there are all the ideas about excellence, relevance, and being on the move, what just Ivo said. So when we established CEEMAN, and that's already 28 years ago, we were thinking that we want to make something good for management education, that we want to improve management education, that we want to put it in the function of reform processes that they were going on. And now, in fact, all these almost 3 decennia, we are all the time on the same track. But of course, the times are changing, and we are changing too, and we are reinventing some, you know, some ideas, some postulates of management education, and try to not only to adjust it, but to make it better and more useful and more noble. Put me like that, let me put it like that, you know, in the sense of being even better and being even more, you know, with more holistic approach and more innovative, etc. So today, you know, if you just one thought still for the end of my introduction, I think that what we like very much in CEEMAN is that everything what we do, like IMTA, International Management Teachers Academy, like PMS, Program Management Seminar, EdTech, case study competition, and etc. All what we do is in fact supporting this great wish for improvement, to make management education with a great impact. And it's so nice to see, you know, and then we have also a special seminar leading the way with Professor Abel, where people are in teams rethinking the strategy of their school and their institution and so on. So I'm so glad that we have Derek with us today, and that we have other people who are really like Slađana, like Ivo, who are really working hard now to making it on the move. So I wish you a great day and a great webinar, a great event. And I'm looking forward to seeing you also among accredited schools if you are by IQA, if you are not already. Thank you.
Thank you, Danica. Thank you so much. And indeed, it's an honor for me to serve IQA as IQA director. It's really an honor, and indeed, we are working quite hard to be also on the move ourselves. I will share my screen to show you the schedule of today. Let me check. Good. Yes. So this is the schedule for today, and indeed, as we added relevance as a very important dimension in the manifesto. We decided also to walk the talk, to be the role model, the example for our accredited schools and for our CEEMAN members, also to reflect on the system we have. It's because not only the institutions should be learning organizations and learning systems, but also the quality system should be a learning system, and the system what always is continuous, is improving, etc. So not only the content, but also the frameworks. And that's why we have also this session to share you our progress. In a few minutes, I will ask Professor Derek Abel to share his thoughts and his vision about the relevance and excellence, not per se related to the accreditation system, but the need in the market. I would say the need of stakeholders of schools. He has 20 minutes. We will kindly ask you to ask your questions in the Q&A. And halfway, Slađana will collect, our colleague, head of IQA office, will collect the questions. And halfway, Derek's presentation or Derek's speech, we have time to answer a few, and he can build on your questions in the second part of his speech. And then if 2:30, I will share the experience we have and the expectations we have as IQA as a management tool, a learning journey. And I will continue about communication and stakeholders, what's needed and what's the benefit of the IQA quality system for schools. Also here, we will collect Q&As. Slađana will collect Q&As to answer it also in between. So don't wait till the very last, because the timing to have the question on the right time is also nice, but we reserve some time to collect the questions. Again, first, the bigger picture, the need in the market. Then we go into the management tool, how to use it. Then we go more to the communication part. And in the end, we, of course, a few minutes for some answers, to answer your questions, what you have maybe in the last. And of course, we will follow up later. I hope you will enjoy the session. I hope you have lots of takeaways after the session, and I look forward to continue with you later. Thank you, and I would like to ask Professor Derek Abel, please, could you share your vision, your experience with the audience? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ivo. I try my best, as usual. What I wanted to do with you for this 20 minutes is try to provide some background about why we're changing, not to go into too much detail. I leave that to Ivo and to Slađana, but you know, what is kind of driving us to really do a rethink. We've been rethinking the IQA. I've been involved as president of this committee for, I think I did for 10 years, maybe it was 20 years ago, and now another 10 years, but I never stopped thinking about how to improve it. And we came to a point now with the writing of manifesto where we really felt we had to make some big changes. So why is this? And let me start with a bit of history. Some of you will be familiar with this, but I'm going to call it our industry, our sector of management education is about 100 and a bit years old. The first schools started in the United States. The very first was Wharton, Harvard Business School, not much later, 1909, I seem to remember, or 1907. And the reason for the founding was that industry, and there were two big industries at the time, agriculture and railways, were of the opinion that the graduates coming out of these best universities, Harvard existed already for 300 years, you know, were not very practical. They were not educated in a way that was relevant to the practice of management and leadership. So actually from the very start, this word relevance was the reason for the launch of our industry. The industry in Europe is younger. It's about 70 years old. I was just asked to make a speech at a 75th anniversary of a school, actually. It was founded in 1946, but before the Second World War, there wasn't much in Western Europe. In Central and Eastern Europe, it's even younger. It more or less, I mean, there were schools of organization and management, but this was something different. When we talk about management and leadership as we know today, there was not much before 1989 when the wall went down. So we're talking about 30 years. And in Asia, it might be even younger. It depends which country. It depends which country we talk about, but you know, maybe 15 to 30 years. So what I want to say from the beginning, this is a young industry. You know, this is younger than the steel industry, younger than a lot of other service businesses. And so it's not surprising that, you know, it's been a kind of a back and forth, a pendulum of change throughout these years. Management education took a wrong turn in the mid-1950s. There were two reports, the Ford Foundation report and the Carnegie Foundation report. After about 50 years of practice-oriented education, these two foundations took it into their heads to make the statement that this was shallow, that it didn't have a solid scientific base. I think that was a big mistake. It launched a lot of work in what was called operations research, essentially trying to make management more mathematical, you know, kind of treating it more like physics, that you could solve things with formulae. And this has been going on since. In one way or another, there have been some, of course, outliers, you know, in the United States, Harvard Business School, University of Virginia, the Darden School here in Europe, IMD, ESE in Spain. But professors heard this story about, you know, management is a kind of science, and I still hear it all the time. Yeah, we're doing scientific work, you know. So I think these two foundations, or whoever was responsible for writing these reports, did not understand the real nature of management and leadership. So let me say a few words about how I understand it. I've been teaching executives and trying to do some research on practice for about 40 years now. So here's what I understand. Management, I'm going to say management and leadership. They're not identical, by the way. I mean, John Kotter said many companies are overmanaged and underled. What he meant by that was not enough movement, too much organization and Ordnung, you know, as the Germans say. But I'm going to use the words together, management and leadership. The nature of it is, I would say, questions more important than answers. Putting questions first is one of the big stories for good leaders, you know, framing the question rather than giving a quick answer. It's more about defining problems than it is about solving them. So a lot of this work of sort of science is already with the idea we have a problem, how do we solve it? My experience is that the real story is how to get what is the problem here? You know, it's a big question. Don't find any mathematical formula that I know of that help you define problems. Maybe they help solve some. It's a field with many answers. There's never one answer. There are many possible answers. It depends on the person, the protagonist, and their own value system and their own sense of judgment. We're all in the business of kind of trying to find balance. Judgment's a big word in leadership and management. I wouldn't be exaggerating to say that the word wisdom is a big word. And I remember reading an article many, many years ago saying wisdom cannot be taught. It's a field of dilemmas, you know, of trade-offs. It's a field, like all human endeavors, that combines three things: reasoning, the ability to get things done, and personal qualities and characteristics. There's always these three things. It's something about knowledge, something about doing, something about being. But in the field of management and leadership, all three are important. it's surprising then to go to some of these schools that I feel have gone on the wrong track, to see that reasoning is taught 80%, getting things done maybe 15%, and the personal characteristics and what leaders have to stand for hardly gets time at all. So if I talk about reasoning, it is not a theoretical story. It's not something you can solve with a mathematical formula. It's much more conceptual. Leadership and management is a conceptual. There's a lot of theory, but it's conceptual theory, not scientific theory in the sense of relationships as you have in math. I'm an engineer, so I spent my early part of my life studying these down formula for airplanes. You know, it's not like that at all. In terms of action, it's much more non-routine than routine. And it's like skiing. You don't learn it by going on the steepest slope first. You learn it by starting on the baby slope and then more difficult, and then mogul skiing. And you know, finally, you can ski downhill on something almost vertical if you're really good. Leadership's a bit the same. It's experiential in that sense. And in terms of personal characteristics, you know, 2 or 3 things stand out for me. It requires robust people. I mean, robust physically. I've been leading a few institutions in my life. It takes a lot of physical energy, but robust emotionally. There's a lot of down and up and disappointments. And, you know, the idea that you can solve this with sort of quantitative formula is crazy. How does a person learn to be robust? It's about people. So it's about relationships, networking, and it's very much about standing for something, having your own priorities clear. So I want to say those people who were promoting a kind of scientific approach were on the wrong track in the 1950s, and they're still on the wrong track. They have, by the way, retracted those 2 institutions, seeing that they've made some grave errors. About 15 years ago now, they stepped back saying, yeah, it should be more of a social science and we need more humanities. This is also not correct. We need humanities, we always did. But that's not the way forward. The way forward is to understand practice. So if I look now, the sort of the status quo, and I don't talk about all schools, there are many exceptions, but there is a drift, and there has been a bad drift. And the first bad drift is that research is more valued than teaching in many schools. They don't say that, but when it comes to promoting professors, which really counts, by the way, that's where, I say, when the shit hits the fan, that's where the problem starts, because that's what professors do. If that's what they're going to be promoted for, that's what they do. There's a deep culture now in many institutions, and the culture says quantification is more important than qualitative research, you know? The method is more important than the substance. Theory is more important than practice. Specialization, some of the research, I read the titles of this research and I say it's so specialized, you know, that no manager could possibly be interested in such a narrow subject. The world of management is holistic. It's about understanding the big picture. And very much in these schools that I think are going off the track, and that's why we're trying to, you know, get them back on the track with even our accreditation system playing some role in this, is that they're appealing to an academic audience, not a managerial audience. When you ask who's the customer, some of these professors would tell you, well, my customer is my peer in another institution. I'm trying to add to the body of knowledge. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the kind of knowledge that managers can use. So I want to say all of that would be bad, but the really bad thing is that we have aggressive competitors coming up, you know, not just coming up, they're already there. Management education used to stand out pretty much as a separate business, but now consulting companies are in our business. They used to do consulting projects and hand over the results in a presentation, and that was about it, but not anymore. Consulting companies are deeply involved in implementing their recommendations. And to do this, they often get into the development of people. So they're in the education business. There's quite a lot of professors who are really good teachers who break out of their schools because they can't do this, but they do it privately for organizations and they do it very well. And there are aggregators bringing some of these professors, cherry picking the best people from the best schools and putting them together. There are a lot of tech companies. You know, Google is in the business of education, even offering degrees now, I saw. And, you know, lastly, the customers themselves are doing it. I talk to so many companies who say, you know, we're kind of frustrated with the slowness of the education industry, management education, to adapt to our needs. We've launched our own corporate academy or our own corporate university. So we've got a lot of dogs biting at the door. And, you know, if we don't change, we're in trouble. So some of you know the name of Johann Roos. Roos is a friend of mine. I haven't seen him for a few years, but Johann is a very well-respected researcher, has done a lot of this more quantitative stuff, but he's a very sensible guy. And he said, this is what he said: we are stuck with an academic system in which business schools are run as if they're deaf, blind, and dumb to the changes going on around us. Too many professors have never worked outside of academia. They have no idea what goes on in practice. They haven't ever been inside a company and spent enough time inside a company to know about it. And they don't know how decisions are made. I mean, this is pretty damning from someone who has fulfilled all the academic qualifications that one needs, but he kind of sees through this now. And, you know, so we're in some difficulty in the industry. I say there are plenty of exceptions. Luckily, there are some schools that are holding the line, but there is like a tsunami wave, you know, out there. And you could ask, well, why doesn't the industry change? And there are some very good reasons why it's difficult to change. The first is these promotion systems. I think when we come with accreditation, one of the first things we look at is not what people say about how they're promoting professors. We really try to look and see what's the basis of promotion. If it's just he managed to publish three good articles in a sort of respectable journal, you know, and that's it. That's not good enough for us. That's not relevant, you know. So promotion is and slippage away from relevance in promotion, away from teaching towards too much emphasis on research alone, not good. The second reason for the difficulty of change is that university faculties, other faculties in the sciences, social sciences, think the business schools are like they are. So they kind of want to have the same standards to promote the professors. Also wrong. Government regulators do the same. Unfortunately, many of those who are giving accreditations, you know, and handing out funds, by the way, to institutions, don't really know what they're doing. I'm very blunt about it. We need to do a much better job of lobbying as an industry to help government understand what is needed in the practice of leadership and management. I think rankings and accreditation schemes generally, I mean, ours is now really an exception, but I think the accreditation schemes in the world have been reinforcing this drift. And lastly, and probably the most important, and I'll stop and take some questions, there's a lingering belief, maybe not even lingering for some young professors, management is a science. Management is not a science. It's not a theoretical science in the sense of being able to quantify things. There are some things you can quantify. I've worked on some of these things, you know, but by and large, I've talked about the nature of management and leadership. This is more of a conceptual, qualitative, experiential activity where personal values and personal character make a big difference. So this sort of impression, it's a science, we have to treat it like a science, we teach it like a science, we research it like a science, is really off the track. But these things are not so easy to change. We've been thinking a lot about how to actually implement the change, and accreditation is one of the blunt instruments with which we can do it. Let me stop there. It's about 12 minutes into what I wanted to say. Let me stop and see if there's a couple of questions, then I'll go on for the second part and be a bit shorter.
Derek, is very good timing. Thank you.
Okay.
Slađana, are there a few questions, or are there a question?
I do have, hello everyone, nice to see you. Nice to see you on the panelist list at least. And I have one question. They're still a little bit shy, so I'm asking everybody, whoever has questions, just write it in chat or Q&A, and we will be happy to answer. But let me start off with one question, and perhaps this is for you, Derek. If management is not science, what can be academic? Or Ivo?
I can answer that very well.
So please.
Well, Derek, of course.
You have the floor in a minute, Ivo. It's okay. I'll try to answer this. I didn't say that when I said it's not a science, I wanted to say it's not an exact science like physics. I said it's a conceptual, it's theoretically conceptual more than scientific. So what is academic? Some of the best work, some of the best research, and it's highly conceptual. It's about, you know, organizing the mind of executives. That's academic. This kind of academic work, this kind of academic teaching and research is much more difficult to do than the specialized discipline research. It's more difficult. That's why not so many people do it. But it's certainly academic. You know, I know of really great researchers who are also great teachers who have great conceptual minds and have applied this to the practice of management. But it's not an accumulation. Many people, I hear the words all the time, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. And I say, that's okay up to a point, but there's some point where you have to drop the idea that management is just a collection of pieces and start looking at the whole. It's a theory of practice itself. It's not a collection of a little bit of marketing and a little bit of finance and a little bit of psychology and a little bit of mathematics. No, it's a theory of practice. And it starts from the practice end, and that's highly academic. You know, it's very difficult work to do. I've done some, and I can tell you it's much more difficult than doing the discipline-based research of specialties. Okay, I think I should go on, Slađana, that we don't, so it was nice to take a question. Ivo, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm very happy with your answer, because I know this is also depending on language, and not in some languages, scientific and academic are very close.
Yeah.
And this explanation helps, because I fully agree with you. Maybe it's not a kind of hard science, but it is really academic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really important to confirm.
That's very important, because people sometimes listen and they say, yeah, but you say teaching and not research. I say, no, all the great teachers have great minds. They're doing inventive, they're creating inventive ways of looking at practice. So this is academic, but it's not scientific, perhaps in that way. Okay. Maybe I go on, Slađana, and then I'll take a couple of questions after the next 7 minutes. Is that okay?
That is okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to leave the practice of accreditation to Ivo to describe, but I do want to say that I think where this took us, this feeling that that many schools are going a bit off the track, has taken us to these 3 words: relevance, excellence, and a kind of dynamic, institutional dynamic. We're interested in seeing schools that are moving. They're on the move to the future, to anticipate change. And so these three things. You can be relevant without being excellent. There's a lot of journalistic books around, you know, which seem to be talking about the real world, but you don't learn much. You just like stories, but they don't cut through it to give you conceptual insight. So it sounds relevant, but it's not well done. If you like, it's you can be excellent without being relevant. You can be the opposite. So some of these schools very much devoted to research and journal research are excellent. There's no question they're excellent. I mean, they do precision work. They have excellent research methodologies. It's carefully done, it's excellent, but it's not relevant. So we decided, you know, we have to look for both. We have to look for relevance and excellence. In the advertising industry, I know a bit about it. It's interesting. These people in advertising agencies will spend 20 or 30 million euros with just 2 criteria. Good point, well presented. So, you know, good point, well presented. That says it has to be excellent. It also has to be relevant. It has to sort of be something that people listen to. So relevance, excellence, and being on the move. And let me just say now a few words about each. Relevance for us means relevant to practice. It means relevance to local practice as well as global or universal. So relevance, if we're looking at a school in a developing country, it doesn't have to do the same things as a school that's in New York City. They have to do the kinds of things that respond to the needs of their customer base. Those companies may not be so far along, the ones that employ their students or the ones that, you know, sponsor their executives to executive education. We're more interested to understand, does the school understand what the problems are that they're trying to develop the people for in the markets they serve? And that means a sense that we have to be sensitive, but we are relying very much on the schools we look at to tell us. And if they can't tell us, we start to worry. If they don't know what the problems of the companies are and the society is, you know, where they're operating, then it's very difficult to talk about relevance. So relevant to practice, relevant to local and as well as sort of universal standards, relevant to today and tomorrow, not yesterday. It might be relevant to yesterday and today and tomorrow. There are some things that don't change, but many things change. So we're looking for that idea of relevance to the things that are now occurring and are likely to occur in the future. And lastly, relevant to the needs of society, not just to the company, because we see some companies, unfortunately, who don't, we're looking at schools who look beyond their customers as well, and maybe help their customers to see the needs of the society as well as the needs of the business. So this is relevance. Excellence is, it means according to some standards. And these standards are constantly shifting because the world doesn't stand still. So we are thinking many times when we think about excellence relative to other institutions like them, that they have to be among the best in class. Once they've defined for us what kind of class they think they're in, they have to be among the best in that class. So excellence is a comparative story. It's about relative to standards and relative to what other schools are doing. And when I say this for relevance and excellence, by the way, I'm talking about teaching and I'm talking about research. I'm not talking about just one, I'm talking about both. I'm talking about teaching relevance and teaching excellence. I'm talking about research relevance, research excellence. And for both, again, not to make it too complicated, it's like a 2x2 matrix. We're looking at content and process. So we might find a school that is teaching the right things, but it's not teaching them very well. You know, the process, they're not using the right processes. They're not using, for example, student-centered processes, not using problem-based learning processes if they're trying to achieve something about practice. Sometimes the schools are talking about the right things, but teaching it in the wrong way. So a lot of ex cathedra teaching. Someone stands up, a professor stands up on a little podium, you know, and then talks about what he believes is the right way to do things. No, we like to see if it's about relevance, it has to start also from the practice end and probably start where the students are, you know, not where the professor is at that time. In terms of being on the move, we're looking for schools that, if possible, are proactive. They are anticipating changes, world changes, and anticipating changes in their clients, what the businesses are wrestling with. So they're kind of they're ahead a little bit. They know what the businesses that they're serving, what the changes are that the business is confronting. Digitalization, for example, globalization, new technologies. They know something about this and they're trying to get ahead of that. They're also trying to get ahead of changes in our own industry. Our own industry is on the move. We're not standing still. So some of these schools are becoming more market-driven, good. And so these good schools are aware of internal change as well and trying to adapt to that and, if possible, go ahead of it. And lastly, we look to see how innovative they are. We're interested in teaching innovations, we're interested in research innovations, we're interested in administrative innovations. You know, schools that do have some new ideas about how to manage things. There's plenty of ways to improve. So these are the three things: change externally driven, change internally driven, narrowing gaps where things get short, and change which is innovation driven, because this is more or less what we're doing. I'm going to stop there, take two more questions, and then pass pass it back to you, Ivo.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay.
I have a few questions. So the first one.
We might take some at the end. I'll take one now, and the rest
Okay.
we'll take at the end.
Okay, so let's start with this one. On the move question mark. How is it possible if accreditation periods last 5, 6, or sometimes 7 years? How can accreditation be on the move if some of the accreditations are lasting for so long?
Yeah, this is a good question, Slađana. We could re-accredit schools every year because they change, is what was the other question. It's not practical. You know, it's a huge job for us and for a school to go through an accreditation process. So what you'll hear this from Ivo, but we're looking at more at the journey than a snapshot. We're trying to take a movie picture and we're trying to project the journey that the school is on rather than saying, click like a photo, buff, you know, we have a picture of you and it's pretty good. No, we see movement and we can anticipate that with when these things are in movement for a period of a few years at least, we can kind of be assured that the school is in the right direction. We're more directional than a snapshot, I would say. And this is our way. And the second reason, it's just impractical and it costs too much, you know, to have 2 or 3 people coming and a lot of school people spending a lot of time. So we did have once the idea of doing it every 3 years, but we just felt this was not necessary. We can get a pretty good feel for whether a school is on the move in the right direction. And for this, after 6 years, yes, certainly things have changed, huh? But they don't change that much. If they're on the right direction when we do it, they're probably still on the right direction after a few years. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop here, Ivo, and we'll take some more questions at the end. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Thank you, Slađana. Yes, let me share my screen again. Here we go. Yes, the practice in the IQA accreditation. So the last half year, we, and I must say thank you, Derek, for a lot of initiatives here, changed added the dimensions of excellence, relevance, and on the move, being on the move explicitly in the guidelines and in the frameworks of the IQA accreditation. Again, we do it because also a quality system is a living system. It also has to improve itself constantly. So now everything is ready, and for the next accreditation we will use this. But of course, we also tested this in the last half year. I see also in the audience there are schools who are in the peer review teams in the last month, and we have the experience also that the explicit dimension of relevance is maybe not when it was not explicitly in the guidelines. It is possible to ask, and it's really interesting to see that in this interview to the schools based on the self-assessment report, where maybe not explicitly is something reported on relevance or relevance, to open the discussion with the management team of a faculty or the management team of a school about relevance, that is more or less the external orientation, is extremely interesting, and it brings the IQA accreditation to a more strategic level. And what's interesting, and that's why I put it here in this slide, this relevance dimension in teaching and research, it's by far more than how satisfied are our students, how satisfied are our employers, what is the employability of the student. It's more. It's because that's what we see a lot, and I think we all have many experience. Also the audience and accreditations. We check the employability of the student or the career of the student We check the publications, but that's a kind of result of all the processes. Here we are going to more a strategic dimension, and we check, we talk with the management. How is the stakeholder group? Could be employers, could be municipalities, could be just the situation where you are. How are they involved in institutional development, in program development, in the research portfolio? So this is not only on the level, I would say, on the implementation and the execution of the primary process of the school. This is already the involvement at the very beginning of the strategic planning process. We just had a call with the school, and they said, okay, we would like really to go into the IQA process, nice accreditation, and we are very happy to hear that's also the relevance dimension is added. But we will define our strategy first, and then when we are finished, we will continue with the IQA accreditation. And we said, no, don't do it. Use the IQA vehicle, use the IQA system to define your strategy, use the framework to involve your stakeholders. You just use it. This is a management tool. So the relevance dimension brings, I would say, a lot of input also for innovations. And not only innovations in the kind of, let's say, in the academic field, but also innovation in learning methods. Because one of the things what really make people moving is not only the content, but also what kind of method, the didactical dimension. This is many cases deserve really more attention. It brings also the excellence dimension in a different kind of perspective, because not only relevance is different from today, tomorrow, and yesterday, but since relevance is moving, excellence will be also differently defined in the future. And especially for schools in the CEEMAN network, they are in many cases very active in different segments. So not only degree programs, but also non-degree, also executive education. The definition of excellence is not always the same. We had a school last week, they said, okay, what do we have to deliver? I said, no, don't worry. We have a framework, deliver your school. You don't have to check what do they want to hear. No. You are the relevance on your place in your time with your institution, with your strategy. That is your relevance. So bring your relevance, don't select. Of course, this is an institutional accreditation. Of course, it is about management and business education. We don't accredit any other field. And again, this is not a program accreditation, but an institutional accreditation. But we take it as it is. The most important is that we see in the accreditation that you are that you are progressing, that you are in a learning in a learning journey, that the school has no solution, because as soon as you talk about we have the best solution, you're not relevant tomorrow anymore, because the solution is for today. So the on the move means the journey. The journey is the most important, and of course, to show your self-reflection and to show where you can improve. Schools who pretend to be almost perfect, we don't believe it. You won't believe it yourself. And it's difficult to prepare your colleagues to tell them that you are perfect. You won't get many people involved, I think. So it makes, and that is really interesting in the field of quality management. Quality management are in many cases a kind of fixed systems, very tough systems. And you feel that quality systems are more or less keep you on the ground in innovations. What we developed here is a quality system which is dynamic. Dynamic in the future of relevance, dynamic in the dimension of the excellence, which means it will adapt to your needs. And it will even better adapt to the needs of your stakeholders. This is the ability to change. We don't ask you to change your organization. No, of course not. The key question is will you be, we are happy then you are relevant today, but how can you tell us that you are relevant also tomorrow and next year? That's how you do it. How to involve stakeholders, how to involve your faculty, how to bring faculty and stakeholders together, how to make it social relevant also. It's not only business relevant. This is also in terms of sustainability, it's also relevant society. This is really an important dimension. And again, I shared you, this is also a management tool. Of course, as a tool, it becomes active. It will be really a pity, if you go for an accreditation, you put 1 or 2 people in a room and you ask them, please write a report. They write a very nice report. You have a peer review team, and all the other people we are interviewing, they are very, very well prepared because they learned this document by heart, and you get accredited, if maybe. But it is a pity. It's really a pity. You missed an opportunity to engage and to engage your staff, to engage your faculty, because you create, with this strategic management tool, you create in psychological ownership of relevance and excellence in your institution. And I think as a dean or associate dean, this is the dream, what you have to go for. Again, it is always important to show also where you see room for improvement in your institution. Can be in programs, can be anything. And it makes the focus of this accreditation really on the level of the institution. Of course, we want to know many things about learning outcomes, etc. Of course, we want to know the portfolio of the programs and some numbers, etc. Of course. But this is how you manage your institution in this way of excellence, relevance, and on the move. I don't go deep into the accreditation because you can download all materials, the guidelines, how to write a report, etc. But this is, I would say, I see it now from the perspective of an institution, how to approach it and what is the attitude. And you will see it may take a little bit more time, by the way, to engage many people and to make it a learning journey and to use it as a management tool. But the impact of it is huge. And it will be nice that people see an accreditation not as something, oh my goodness, again, but that they like it. That will be great. And we go for that. It's also an interesting way of to involve stakeholders. And not only, I think, many cases, corporates or governments, etc., they are somehow connected to schools, but not in an explicit way. And I would say, if you involve them really in this as a management tool in the policies of the school, not only to have a board of famous people, of very nice people, and then in this board, I'm afraid I know quite some schools who do this. They listen to the school, to this board once a year, and they go home, and then it's it. And this is more to have a kind of ambassador or a flag on your school. But real listening, that's a different story. Real conversation, real dialogue, listening not only to the need, what kind of employee do you need, but what is the need in your market? What is the change in your market? To make long-term decisions for innovation and research and teaching. Not only what is the best student, of course, it's extremely important, but the school is more than only a place for competence development. The school is also the place where you create transition in the world. And I think we all agree that this is really highly needed. And this is also where schools can come back on the place where they should be, the place in society and where they easily can compete, like consultants, etc. We have to be a real school, a real school. So this is in the institutional development, and you see here the same, the involvement of stakeholders in learning and teaching. So as I said with the last slide, this is not only about checking how happy they are. We meet many employees, oh, you're such a good student, perfect. But then it becomes a bit silent when you ask them, what about your strategic vision on the school? What could you bring to the school on the strategic level? And not only the flag or the ambassador, no, real stuff, how to organize this. And I think it's nice to organize it. If you see in the system of IQA, involve your stakeholders will be much more aware of the fact that you do this in an accreditation, that this is quality. This is not marketing only. This is not only PR. This is not making people important. No, this is quality management. And your stakeholders will become more aware of the impact of the IQA accreditation. It also here, so it's not only to create internal psychological ownership, but also external psychological ownership. I think, especially for management and business schools, this is really important, and it will give also many, I would say, opportunities, because as soon as you talk on a more strategic level with your stakeholders, it will bring many ideas for cooperation and research, to cooperation and company-specific programs or whatever. It will bring a lot because you talk on another level. You don't talk only about students anymore. So this is a recognition, and of course, and especially in the CEEMAN network, this is also huge recognition of peers, because the schools who are accredited in this way, it's so nice to talk with schools who have the same experience, how to keep this relevance, how to keep it, and how to move forward. It brings much more energy and inspiration also among peers. It's not only about technical stuff, how to measure or how to collect data, but this is those hygiene factors. So let's see, the traditional thing is a hygiene factor. We have to do more than that. Last but not least, so this was what I would like to share about the accreditation and what is different in moving forward. We also learned a lot about not only virtual, but also the old accreditations, how you do it. And of course, from our IQA office, since this is not an exam, but a learning journey, we support you in your journey. We guide you. Of course, we don't tell you how you do it, of course not. But this is also like a school, like supporting staff, consulting staff, like guiding how it works, guiding how you could do it. Maybe when you have questions for us, maybe we don't have an answer, but we have more questions, and you will learn yourself from the questions we ask you. This is learning. This is what you teach your students. We'll guide you also in the peer review visit, how to organize it. Don't try to tell too much. We come there to listen to other people also. The questions are more important than the answers, as Derek also shared. And this is walking the talk. This is also not in the classroom. This is also how you manage your institution. And this is how we manage our IQA office and how we manage our relationship with you. And maybe about communication, teamwork, maybe the best person who could share how we do that is our colleague, head of IQA office, and I don't see her picture now, but Slađana, maybe you, yes, maybe you could take the floor now and maybe share a few minutes about the support we give as an organization.
Yes, Ivo, thank you. I hope you can all hear me. When it comes to communication and collaboration during these pandemic times, it was the time to also establish an online system. So I'm here to tell you that we do have a virtual office. I'm here to tell you that it is our goal to create a safe and safe environment for open and transparent communication. So I could go on for hours talking about every little step of the accreditation process, but the main thing for me is that all of you know, whenever you have questions, doubts, all you need to do is send me an email, and of course you will get an invite to our virtual office, where it is imperative that we meet face to face, although we are in a virtual environment. I always insist on connecting the names with the faces and the smiles and the eyes. So this is the beginning of our journey. After that, we just follow the instructions and the guidelines that you all can find now on our new website. You can always write an email to me. I will give you all the necessary documents. But besides that, for me personally, IQA and CEEMAN and all the schools around it are all about people. So for me, it's really inspiring when we go, whether it be in person or in an online site visit. It's really inspiring to see the amazing work that the schools are doing. And once you get everybody involved, like Derek said, and like Ivo explained, we did quite a few visits now also in an online format. So we can compare a little bit. In both formats, you can feel the emotions, you can feel the atmosphere, you can feel the drive and the engagement of the schools who really try to pull in all the stakeholders. So we have management teams, we have students, we have alumni, we have business representatives, teachers, researchers, everybody. So we take a holistic approach and we take a look at the organization. And of course, we are here to listen. We are here to help you grow. And at the very end, we are all here to make this world a better place. So I think IQA is doing that. Just very last thing, again, whoever has a question, whoever would like to talk to us, please send me an email. I will be here to talk to you, to answer all of your questions. So I will stop here. I could go on for hours, but no, I will stop here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We can check the questions now if you are up for it. We have some Q&As. I have a question here from Haset. She's asking, what do you think of replacing internship with simulations? Now, this is a very advanced and on-the-move question.
Can I answer you something? I think there's not one answer for this. It's important that for any, I would say, goal or any purpose of any module or learning, I would say, element, that the learning methods should fit to the purpose of this module. And if the learning, the preferred learning outcomes is something to practice the dynamics, for example, to practice, to learn about how to collaborate, to learn about interdisciplinary stuff. Simulations are perfect. But if something is there, learning about real life, no, it's not. Because an internship brings something in the journey of the student of unpredictable. The simulations, of course, you can manage it, but the internal relationship, you like people or not, oh, I don't like this colleague, what should I do? That won't work in simulation, but it will work in real life. So again, there's never a best solution for one situation. It's depending on what do you want the student to learn.
Thank you, Ivo. I have a couple of questions in the chat. So Derek and Ivo, if both of you can listen in. So we have a question from Mark Smith from Stellenbosch Business School, South Africa. He says, thank you for these interesting contributions. Derek Abel mentioned the importance of management being based on values as well as the science of decision making. Where does this appear in the accreditation process? Derek, if you can unmute. Thank you.
You hear me?
Yes.
This is a good question. I'm happy with this question. In the brochure, and I hope you have a chance to look at it, there's a big chart, which is essentially a business system. And it starts at the left end with guiding principles. And these guiding principles are the vision of the school, the mission of the school, and the values of the school and the people in it. You know, so in there also actually is educational philosophy of the school and the strategy of the school and the positioning of the school, but it's all of those things kind of up front. I'm writing a piece right now, which is the title of which is Putting Values Up Front. So in our accreditation, they're up front. That's where it is. We are looking at that as the point of departure. The next point downstream in the system is all of the inputs. It's basically infrastructure, you know, the campus, the library, the professors, the IT systems, the processes, the students, by the way, all of the inputs that are behind getting the teaching and research to be relevant. They say, you know, for every soldier, there are 9 people behind the scenes. And it's the same with this management education. There's a teaching and a research activity, but it's all built on something. And at the very back is what you asked about from South Africa, what you asked about, the principles, the inputs, and then there's the teaching and research itself. We look at, of course, we look at that. But then the last piece of this business system is outputs, outcomes, impact. So we're looking at 4 stages. We're trying to look at the guiding principles of the school, vision, mission, values. We're trying to look at the inputs the school uses, faculty, infrastructure, processes, technology, students. We're looking at teaching and research itself, and we're trying to understand the outcomes that are the result from all this. And probably, Ivo, it would be true to say that what you really look for is alignment of that whole system. You know, you can look at all the parts separately, but the real story is, if, for example, the faculty promotion system is doing one thing and the mission statement says another, something is horribly wrong. That's one of the things we discover all the time, that, you know, somewhere in the inputs, particularly the faculty and the faculty promotion, there's one understanding of the mission. And when you read the guiding principles, it sounds great. We believe in this, we believe in that, we're trying to do this, you know, that sounds good, but it's not carried through into practice. So that's, I hope that answers the question. It's the starting point for us. It's not the finishing point. The finishing point is to see whether it actually gets done.
Thank you, Derek.
And you're right, Derek. Consistency internal is quite complicated for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Slađana, do we have more questions?
Yes, we do. So when we talk about relevance and excellence, how would you define impact compared with excellence? Who would like to take this question?
Yeah, maybe I start and then Eva would add something. Excellence and relevance runs through that whole business system. It runs from the statements of vision and mission to the inputs. The inputs have to be excellent. The teaching and research has to be excellent, and the outcomes have to be excellent and relevant. So it's not excellent at one point in the system and you know, outcomes somewhere else. Excellence and relevance have to run through. Movement has to run through. We're looking at the whole business system of an institution and trying to assess these 3 things all the way through: excellence, relevance, and movement. So we're not looking at one, or not looking only at outcomes. We're looking at all of the pieces for excellence, all of the pieces for relevance, all of the pieces for movement.
Yeah, I think we made the definition of impact more specific. There are many dimensions of impact, and what we did, we defined impact as relevance. So we made 3 angles to make impact, first of all, more clear, second, better to manage, a third, better to measure.
Just, I mean, on the research side, Ivo, if you ask me, you know, how do we look for impact on the research side? It would not be how many publications in certain classes of journal. It would be, is something that your faculty is thinking about, providing a new perspective on, making a presentation on. Maybe they've written something in a newspaper, if possible, a good publication, which influences the management community. That's impact. That's impact.
We had recently a session and we talked about relevance of research, and it was nice to see that faculty were more or less invited to show their activities more than only publications, and they brought a lot of energy in the room, because they have a huge variety of roles in society apart from teaching, and a big part of that is also research or related to research. And this is important for the relevance of research for the school. but this is not a traditional way how faculty or researchers are assessed. And this is a nice dimension. And so for many schools, there is more than you think in many cases. Slađana, is there another question?
Yes, there is one more question, a couple of more, but you decide when we stop. And just to let you know, whoever has written down some questions, we will be answering them later on also via email. So let me read this one, and you will decide when to stop. So the excellence often is related to the operational excellence and also as a highest level of quality. It could bring to confusion. The necessity is to provide the explanation of excellence in higher education very clearly, and how IQA explains this. How would you comment on this question?
Yeah, I think the answer is, the way that higher education sees it is not necessarily the way we see it. Let me just talk about content and process. First of all, I have to separate this question always for excellence and relevance. And I said that earlier, but let's talk about content, excellence. We would be looking, for example, at different programs, degree programs, undergraduate programs, master's programs, MBA programs, to see if the curricula, the things that are being taught, whether that's the right mix. I was in a school not so long ago, actually, in Central Europe, and I asked to see the curriculum of the undergraduate program, and I found that law was getting more time than marketing. And I said, that's not excellent. I've nothing against law, but if these people are going out into practice, they're going to start a company, the legal side, you can find an expert to give you that advice. You have to know enough to know who to ask, but it's not the main story. That's not excellent. Excellence is having a good balance. Other schools, for example, I see, they spend a lot of time on foundations, on economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics, mathematics, psychology, sociology, anthropology, and God knows what, but not much about the real stuff of managing and leading, not enough. So that's not excellent. That happens a lot because a lot of professors, that's what they're most comfortable with. They're more comfortable with teaching macroeconomics or econometrics than they are with teaching, practical marketing. That's not excellent. So it has to do with the mix of what is taught. And we have some ideas for different levels of program, according to the mission of the program, about what should be in it and what should not be in it. We look for that, If it's about process excellence, I think the main thing is that we look to see whether the process of teaching, which is being used, corresponds to the task. It corresponds to what is, everything that's being taught has its own methodology. If you're trying to teach operations of a factory, then you need one kind of teaching. If you're trying to understand, the strategy of a company and the leadership story, maybe you need another kind of methodology. So we're trying to understand whether the school's got it right with respect to, they say in English, horses for courses, the right process for the right subject. And we see many times too much, reading off ex cathedra teaching. Professor is trying to unload what is in his or her head into the student's head, rather than trying to understand the student's head and put in what they now need. That's called participant-centered learning. That's excellent or not excellent. If it's just professor unloading everything they know, the last thing they ever learned, that's not excellent for the student. So these are some of the things we're looking at.
So we are in a world of learning, right?
Yeah.
And this is more than only the exploitation of teaching.
Good.
And let me add here another dimension, also in the more, let's say, institutional management. There's operational excellence, and it's kind of word which is used too often, because it stands in business for the more reliable in terms of predictability, the better. Mm-hmm. And that's a pity, because we talk about people. So I'm not sure if those terms more or less took from business for education. Yeah. I'm not sure, because we just talked today also about innovation. We talk about people. We talk about listening and not only telling. And if we make everything, I would say, to excellence in terms of operations, where is it hard? Where's the heart? Where's the human touch? So the excellence, what we are doing, has to do with input and output. And of course, the process should be managed well, but it should be trying to make it customized, trying to experiment. If you don't fail, you will never have success. So now it's I would say many big systems, and I know all those higher education systems, they are based on huge institutions. Don't make it too rigid, because you should be a living institution and not a system institution in terms of bureaucracy. It will be a pity. You kill a lot of things.
You know, Ivo, just to add to that, what I said, what John Cotter at the Harvard Business School said about American corporations, overmanaged and underled. What he meant by was exactly what you say. They have very good operational systems, but they're so much tied up in their bureaucracy, they don't move. You know, they can't move because they're handcuffed with their systems. So we're looking, I've been in a few schools, unfortunately, like that. You know, the dean thinks his job is to sign in the morning all the mail and get it out on time and all this kind of stuff, you know, rather than sitting down with the professors and discussing their work, their ideas about the future, what they want to teach and work on. And so this is very different. So operational excellence is good, but it's far from sufficient. And it might even be that it's overdone. You know, if it's at the expense of movement, it's not good.
Yes. Okay, I think we are a bit, you know, the timing is going now. I would ask, Slađana, do we have really a question what's really important for now? Not that other questions are not that important, but
we do have a couple of operational questions and also some questions from the peer reviewers, but however, we will be organizing additional workshops where we can answer all of these questions and we will be answering them. So for now, I think we can stop. If somebody has something to add, Derek and Ivo, we can.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think because I know there's a few peer reviewers, and it's really nice to see our colleagues there. That's really, I appreciate that they're also here. But we have soon workshops for peer reviewers, and those workshops we take really a lot of time to discuss and to go deep. Because what we didn't address today is how to approach it as a peer reviewer when you read a self-assessment report, when we go for a site visit, how to do it, how to differentiate it from what you maybe used to do before. Many things. We did not address this today because we designed a few special workshops for that. Today was, I would say, more a general introduction of our homework. We do the homework for you, and we want to be relevant for you in the future, and that's all about. And I would agree to finalize the session now. I would like to thank you all, Derek, Slađana, especially you, and also the audience. I see that the participation is really lasting very high level long. Mostly you lose at least 50% of participation during the session, but here we keep it quite high. So I hope that is a good indicator. And again, thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for your questions. And we stay in touch and looking forward to work together with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you all. Well.